أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما لونها. قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة صفراء فاقع لونها تسر الناظرين. قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي إن البقرة شابه علينا وإنا إن شاء الله لمهتدون. قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا ذلول تثير الأرض ولا تسقي الحرث مسلمة لا شية فيها. قالوا الآن جئت بالحق فذبحوها وما كادوا يفعلون. وإذ قلتم نفسا فادارأتم فيها والله مخرج ما كنتم تكتمون. فقلنا اضربوه ببعضها كذلك يحيي الله الموتى ويريكم آياته لعلكم تعقلون. ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة. وإن من الحجارة لما يتفجر منه الأنهار وإن منها لما يشقق فيخرج منه الماء وإن منها لما يهبط من خشية الله وما الله بغافل عما تعملون. أفتطمعون أن يؤمنوا لكم وقد كان فريق منهم يسمعون كلام الله ثم يحرفونه من بعد ما عقلوه وهم يعلمون. وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلا بعضهم إلى بعض قالوا أتحدثونهم بما فتح الله عليكم ليحاجوكم به عند ربكم أفلا تعقلون. أولا يعلمون أن الله يعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون. ومنهم أميون لا يعلمون الكتاب إلا أماني وإن هم إلا يظنون. فويل للذين يكتبون الكتاب بأيديهم ثم ثم يقولون هذا من عند الله ليشتروا به ثمنا قليلا فويل لهم مما كتبت أيديهم وويل لهم مما يكسبون. صدق الله العظيم. The 32nd hadith from the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. عن أبي سعيد سعد بن مالك بن سنان الخدري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا ضرر ولا ضرار. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه والدارقطني وغيرهما مسند ورواه مالك في الموطأ عن عمرو بن يحيى عن أبيه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مرسلا فأسقط أبا سعيد وله طرق يقوي بعضها بعضا. On the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, there shall be neither harming, darar, nor reciprocating harm, dirar.
Our fiqh last week, for those who may not know, we started the chapter of purification from the book Nur al-Idah, which is a contemporary book from a major Hanafi fiqh scholar, Imam al-Shurmbulali, and he starts off this chapter of purification not with wudu, not with ghusl, rather he starts off with water. He says, what is water? He puts water into certain categories. Okay, he talks about water, the categories of water, and what we can use and what we can't use. So that's what we were talking about. And inshallah, quickly we will recap what we mentioned last week and move on to this week's inshallah explanations. Naam. So Kitab al-Tahara. Kitab al-Tahara translates to as the chapter of purification. Now he mentions that which is permissible for purification. And he mentions a few different types of water. Yeah, this was from last week. He mentions ma'us sama, water from the sky, i.e. rainwater. Ma'al bahr, sea water. Ma'al nahr, river water. Ma'al bi'r, well water. Wa ma'al thalj, snow. Wa ma'al bard, hailstone. And ma'al ayn, and spring water, from natural spring water from that gushes from the ground. Now these are the natural sources of water in which a person can use to purify themselves. So when we say purification, we're talking about wudu and ghusl. Okay, wudu, ghusl, and also cleanliness of day-to-day things like clothes or places of prayers and things like that. Things that we would need to purify ourselves. Now, this was the main part, the types of water. Okay. He goes, Al-awwal tahir mutahir ghayra makwa wa ma'al mutlaq. So the first type of water a person is able to use, the first category of water you could say, is water which is pure and purifying. So the water is pure in and of itself. What does that mean? It means that water is free from any smell, taste or color, any type of impurities such as urine, vomit, blood. Water which is pure in and of itself. That's the first type. So it's pure and pure. Okay, it's pure within itself. However, it's not just pure within itself, but it's also purifying. When we say purifying, okay, that means water which we can use for wudu or ghusl, as spiritual purification. Now, someone might be asking, what's the difference? There are types, okay, he's going to mention a category here, where there's a type of water which is pure in and of itself, but it's not purifying. Meaning this water is pure to use, but it's not pure enough, or it's not pure in the spiritual sense for you to use for wudu. So you could clean your clothes with it, you could wash the dishes with it, however you can't use that water for wudu. Okay, that's water which is pure but not purifying. But the first type of water that we're talking about is water which is pure in and of itself and is also purifying for a spiritual act of worship, which is wudu and ghusl. And he goes, وَهُوَ مَاء الْمُطْلَقِ. مَاء الْمُطْلَقِ is commonly just known as plain water. Water, okay, plain water. There's nothing mixed with it. Naam. Number 2. Okay, this again was last week's. The second type of water, okay, is that which is pure in and of itself. Meaning it's pure and it's purifying. Okay, like the first category. But in this category, it's pure and purifying, but it's makruh to use. It is makruh to use. It is disliked. Makruh means disliked to use. Now, someone might be sitting there and saying, it's not haram, it's disliked, so I can still do it. That's fine and all. Na'am, in terms of fiqh, if you're talking black and white fiqh, okay, that's fine. However, when we open the doors to it's fine to do a makruh, then you open the door to many other things, because it starts off with a makruh and then it goes more severe and severe till when? Till the point where haram becomes quite easy. So that's when you need to be mindful of not saying things like it's just makruh, because makruh also is something which is a category in Islam which is not seen as a good thing. And then there are two types of makruh. Okay, the two types of makruh: makruh tahrim and makruh tanzih. Makruh tahrim is that which is disliked and you are sinful for doing this thing. Makruh tanzih, you are not sinful, but there is still a dislike. Now, if a cat or anything similar to a cat, is anything which is a animal which is a domesticated animal, or anything which is anything which you can't avoid, meaning it goes in and out of the house generally. Okay. Now, in our day and age, there are many things like that except like a cat. Okay. But in their time, they would put a donkey under a similar ruling. You know, the exact same ruling, but a similar ruling in the terms of that it goes in and out of the house, or it's something that you look after, it's around you. Okay. So if a cat has drunk from this water, and you know that this cat, its mouth does not contain anything which is impure, like you've not just seen the cat have a mouse. Okay. If you haven't seen that, or you know that's not a possibility for your cat, then we would say it's makruh. But if it was otherwise, where you saw this cat eat a mouse or anything, okay, which is najis, which is impure, okay, then you would the category would change. You would not be allowed to use that water anymore. The third type of water, again, we covered this last week as well, is water which is pure in and of itself, but is not purifying. So this water is pure, but you are not allowed to use this water for the purpose of wudu or a ghusl. When we say ghusl, we're not talking about a shower that we go just to clean ourselves. I've got a bit of mud on me, I'm going to clean myself. I've not had a shower for 2 days, I'm going to clean myself. No. We're talking in this shower which is a darura, which is a necessity, which is actually fard upon you, which is obligation, and that will be a shower that one does when they ejaculate or they have a wet dream or along those lines. And then the state of janaba. This is an obligatory shower. So for an obligatory shower where you have certain conditions you must fulfill, like you wash the entire body, you gargle, and you put water into your nose once and get that water out. At this type of shower, you would not be able to use this category of water. The water is pure in and of itself. It's got no physical impurities within it, but it's not spiritually purifying for wudu and for ghusl. And what type of water is this exactly? Okay, an example of that is water which has already been used for wudu. And I give you an example. Let's say Muhammad, or let's say Abdullah. Okay, Abdullah is doing wudu, and the basin of the sink which the water is falling in, okay, it's got a plug on. Okay, the water is not going down the drain for whatever reason. Now that remaining water, that leftover water which has left his body now, that is that category of water which is pure but not purifying. Meaning that water in and of itself is clean. Okay, it's just touched your skin for a few seconds and it's come. Now generally, yes, maybe some people might not see that as clean, but generally it's clean. It's not mixed with anything impure. So the water is pure in and of itself, but it's not purifying. That remaining water which is still in the basin now, and his brother, his sister, a person from his household can't come now and just start using that water. Yes, they can use that water to clean their clothes. They can use that water to clean the dishes. They could use that water for cleaning, I don't know, even that same basin, the bathroom, whatever. But they can't use that water for the state of wudu or a ghusl. This is something we refer to as ma'al musta'mal, water which has already been used for the purpose of wudu. Now last week, inshallah, you can go back to see that video, week before last week, the last session, we talked about ma'al musta'mal. We went more deeper into it and the different categories and the different scenarios, and inshallah that video will help you there. But now we're going to move on, inshallah. And then we also have another one, qurba. And qurba is quite long to explain right now. But inshallah you can look at the video before this, inshallah, the previous video. And we talked about when does water become musta'mal, when does water become used, that third category of water. It becomes used when the water, okay, when you're doing wudu and the water separates from your body. Because there's another opinion out there which some of the scholars mentioned, that when the water separates from the body and touches the ground and becomes still, it does not move anymore, that's when it becomes musta'mal. But this is not the case. The case is when the water separates from your body. Then he mentions ma la yajuzu wudu bihi, that which is not permitted for wudu. Again, this is something we did last week. Tree water, anything. I gave you a principle last time, is anything which you can't call water, you can't make wudu from. As simple as that. So orange juice, for example, we know orange juice is an orange juice. No one would logically think orange juice is something you can do wudu from. But the fiqh books, they mention everything basic for every single person to look into and to understand. Because a person may come to this judgment. Na'am, it's orange juice, but aslan, okay, originally, in its asl, it came from water. The water which you poured down the plant, or that rainwater which fell onto the plant, that same water is in that orange, or is in that fruit. So therefore, I can do wudu from it. A person could think like this, that's why he's mentioned it. Okay? So, a person is not allowed to make wudu from any type of fruit or even tree water. Okay, let's put a fruit water, tree water. If you were to extract the water from a tree, you would find that the water is clear. And a person can obviously may think that, let me make wudu from this. You are not allowed, because there's kamal al-imtizaj, it is called in Arabic. Kamal al-imtizaj is when this water has kind of molecularly or has completely mixed with something else to the point where it's not just plain water anymore. This is called kamal al-imtizaj. And you are not allowed to use any water which has changed in its essence. And what's the essence of water? What is water in and of itself? What actually is water? Water is that which has something which has a flowing nature and a certain thinness to it. I won't call it a thickness, a thinness to it. For example, if you were to put some type of chemical within water to make it thick, that's no longer water. The essence of water is lost. I can't make wudu from that anymore. Okay? If al-riqqa was saylan, this is what it's called in Arabic, al-riqqa was saylan. If al-riqqa was saylan has changed due to some type of cooking, some type of process, then you can no longer use that for wudu. And this is quite simple, this is quite logical. Now, this is where we stopped off last week. That which overwhelms water, okay? Al-ghalaba. Ghalaba, what is ghalaba? Okay? When water is empowered or is overwhelmed by something. So simply what we're talking about is when water is mixed with something else. What is the cutoff point? When is the cutoff point for me to say that's not water anymore? This is what he's going to mention here. Because if for example, let's say some dilute, okay. When can I say that's not water anymore? So he categorizes this subject, this part, into two types: solids and liquids. When water mixes with a solid and when water mixes with a liquid. So the rules differ now. So quite simply, if a water gets mixed with a solid, let's use the example of an apple here. You have a bucket of water that is fresh, that is clean, that is plain. Could be rainwater, could be water from your tap, it could be water from a river. And you put some apples into that water. Now, as the days go by, you'll begin to notice that the water smell, color, and taste will change. It will no longer be plain water. Okay, something will overpower this water. Now, simply mention, okay, if water mixes with a solid, and if it does not change its essence, its flowing nature, and its thinness, then that water is completely fine, even if there is a change in the smell and in the taste and in the color. And this is when it's a solid. So if a solid mixes with water, even if the smell, color, and taste has completely changed, you've come back a few days later and it looks like muddy water. It tastes like apples, okay? It smells like apples. You can still make wudu from that water. Again, this is the key point. As long as it's solid and it's not changed its riqqa and saylan, its thinness and flowing nature, you can make wudu with that water. And then he mentions another thing. He mentions if another liquid gets mixed in with water, so milk, juice, Coca-Cola, whatever it may be, if that gets mixed with water, then where's the cutoff point? When can I start saying now that this is no longer water, or this is no longer fit for wudu? This is what he talks about here. And this is still that third category. This is still that, it falls under that third category, sorry, it falls under this third category of water which is pure but not purifying. So if I have water and I have a liquid which has three qualities. Which three qualities? Smell, color, and taste. So I have water and I have a liquid which has all three qualities. Meaning, let's say Coke, okay, or let's say any type of fizzy drink. Let's say Coke is easy, okay? A Pepsi. It has smell, that liquid has smell, it has color, and it has a taste in and of its own, okay? And I have a bucket of water. Now let's say I pour in 100 milliliters of that Coke into water. If one characteristic of that Coke, meaning those three things, smell, color, taste, if one of them appear in that bucket of water, then that water is fine for me to do my wudu with. So I've come and someone, khalas, the power, there's no water. In my house there's no water. Example, there's no water working in Abdullah's house. Okay, the piping's khalas for a week. Okay, example, a few days, few hours even. And he knows this, so he's gone and he's got a few buckets of water and he's placed them in his house. His little brother comes drinking a bit of Coca-Cola and he drops about 100 milliliters in. Abdullah's found out now and he goes and he looks at that water and he investigates. And he finds that water is still clear. There's no change to the color. He smells it. He can't smell any Coke. He goes, let me have a bit of a taste. And he tastes that water. and he finds a hint of Coca-Cola within that water, okay, diluted within the water. He is now, there's a green light for him to use that water for wudu. If, however, he finds two characteristics or more, he finds all three or two, so he goes and he finds a smell and he finds a colour, but he tastes it and there's no taste, then that water is no longer deemed fit for wudu. It's pure, still pure, but it's not purifying. That's why it's under this category. Naam. If a liquid has, okay, naam, if a liquid doesn't have any characteristic, it does not have any characteristic, meaning it doesn't have a smell, it doesn't have a color, it doesn't have a taste, and that mixes with water, what do we do then? Now, what would be an example of this? A liquid besides water, a liquid which has no smell, no color, no taste. In the book he mentions, okay, Ma'al Ward, he mentions rose water which has lost its smell. So if you have rose water and you leave it for long enough, it will lose its smell. So that is now a clear liquid which Allah Alam has no taste. It may have some taste, but that's what he's mentioned here. Okay, it has no taste and it does not have a smell. Now if that amount of, if that rose water now falls in the bucket of water, then how will we know if it's fit for wudu? Because we can't now assess the color, smell or taste, because both of the liquids, the water and the rose water which has lost its smell, you can't see no smell or color, taste. So what do? Now you measure it. If the water is more than the rose water, then it's fit for wudu. And if it's the opposite, okay, if it's the contrary to that, then it's not fit for wudu. And that's what's mentioned in the third type. Now the fourth type of water is ma'un najis. It's najis water. Najis is filthy water. When we say filth, we don't mean mud or dirt. We mean that which Islam calls filth. Pus, blood, urine, feces, okay? This is what is najis. So if you have a small quantity of water, and what is a small quantity of water? The scholars give their opinion, of course. A small quantity of water is water which is less than 10 by 10 arm lengths. So if you have a swimming pool which is less than 10 by 10 in its length and width, less than 10 by 10, that is considered a small quantity of water. So again, let's say a bucket of water now, small, just a mid-sized bucket. That is a small quantity of water. If a drop of any najis falls into the small quantity of water, then that water now is not allowed to be used for wudu. He mentions here if the water is still and running. If the water is running, okay, if the water is still water, that's the ruling what I just mentioned. If the water is running, meaning you're at a riverbank, and on the riverbank, you're on one side, and on the other side, there's someone maybe, okay, answering the call to nature, okay, or throwing some blood or something, whatever it may be. And the water would travel down towards you. As long as there's no smell, color, and taste in the water in front of you that you're using, then there's no problem. Again, this is when it's running water. And then the fifth type of water he mentions is that water which is doubtful. That water which is mashkook, okay, in its purification. And that is water which a donkey has drunk from. Why? Why is this? Because later on there's more rules, okay, that if a certain animal drinks from the water, is that water deemed fit for me using it for wudu? For example, if a pig came and started drinking from water, can I use that water? If a dog came, if a cow came, if a goat came. Okay, so now we're talking about water which is mashkuk. Here he's mentioned that this will be explained later on in another chapter. Just I will quickly mention it because we will not do that chapter. So why is this water mashkuk, is doubtful, this water? Because historically, okay, and talking Islamically now, the Muslim Ummah, okay, is unsure if a donkey is fit to eat or not to eat. Because we have narrations out there where it's been mentioned that you're allowed to eat donkey. But then we have contradicting narrations which mention that donkey isn't allowed. Okay, there's a hadith of Prophet that they were cooking donkey and he came and he said, stop cooking this meat, you're not allowed to eat this meat. So the ulama are not sure if the negation of eating donkey was the last thing or was the first thing. Meaning, was donkey initially impermissible, then did it become permissible, or was it permissible then became impermissible? So that's doubtful, we're not sure. So as an ummah, we will say, what happens when you find this water? It's doubtful. What's the ruling? If you have no other water besides that water, you're in the desert, you're going to miss prayer, whatever it may be, then they say, make wudu with that water and tayammum. That way, you have wudu no matter what. Tayammum is dry ablution. Because Islamically, if that water is pure, because we're allowed to eat donkey, because we're not sure, we may be allowed, we may not be allowed. If we are allowed to eat a donkey, then that water is pure. Because the saliva of the donkey touched the water, then it's still pure, doesn't matter. But however, if it is impure and we can't eat that donkey, then the saliva of it is impure. And if the saliva has touched that water, then it makes the water impure. So because that's a possibility, we'll make tayammum just in case. So either way, if you find water like this, you make wudu and you do tayammum, and it's a win-win situation, basically. Okay, so these are the 5 categories of water that he has mentioned in Nur al-Idah. Inshallah, we will take some more from this book here and there. Okay, we're not doing this book the entire way through. We will take the book from here and there. We will do some seerah. We will this gathering. Okay, if a person joins at home every week, if a person comes every week, they will get a bit of fiqh, they will get a bit of seerah, they get a bit of aqidah, they get a bit of everything. Inshallah, a bit of tafsir, a bit of hadith. Okay, and that's why it's been created. So you get a bit of everything. If someone comes, it's an open, it's a free class. And if someone sits for a year or 2, then inshallah they will learn a good amount of Islamic knowledge, inshallah. That's why it's random. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to benefit from the ulama, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us kamal of understanding, kamal al-fahm of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum.